I'm the founder director of Corex. Corex is a Google Cloud partners. We do modern consulting around digital modernization, AI, Gen AI consulting, SRE as a service, and trainings and workshops around Google Cloud. So anything, everything, to some extent, Google Workspace as well. Anything related to Google Cloud. I'm also a Google Cloud GDE. So you're a Google Developer Expert and GDG Organizer from Sydney. This is another title that I've just added after Vegas. So I got nominated as Google Ambassador for AI ML. I'll brag a little bit. One and the only one from Australia and New Zealand. So we are the only partner who got the Google Ambassador for Australia. From a high level, what are we going to do? The problem. So we'll look at what the problem is, what problem we solve. Because the demo that I'm going to present today and the workshop that we'll perform today, it's based on some real project challenges that we are encountering every now and then that we try to solve. The architecture, how we develop the solution, what are the services we use, and then there is no benefit of going through the slides unless we see it in action. So we'll try and simulate 3 acts. I'll give a bit of demo. I've tried my hard to turn that demo in a workshop. So hopefully the code repo that I've created for you guys as a workshop, it works. If it doesn't, we'll figure it out. Don't blame me. I was just trying to figure it out on my way to Brisbane. So, and some key takeaways. So we have looked at the problem, we built a solution. Now what next? What's in it for you guys? So what's the problem? Looks like most of the people are not from data engineering background. So to give you an overview, when you develop a data engineering pipeline, which is let's take an example, maybe a banking or retail business. So there are different source systems, shopping cart, or maybe, I don't know, there are ERP systems and quite a lot of source systems that actually take this data and then they dump it into a data lake. So the data is coming, source systems being loaded into data lake. Then from data lake, we develop transformation cycles. So when we say transformation cycles, that is to take the data from unstructured sources, create it in a structured form so that the businesses can use it. So there are multiple layers where you do the transformation and you make it business ready, going through some transformation cycles. And that's where the whole data pipeline comes into the play. So how many of you are from platform engineering background or from DevOps background? You run your CI/CD pipelines, right? So for the infrastructure deployment or application deployment, if it is serverless, it is pretty much the same thing here. You are just developing the pipelines for those transformations to occur automatically when there are new data files coming in from different sources. Why schema pipeline or why schema mapping breaks pipelines? And at times engineers do. What I mean by schema mapping, so all the source systems, they are coming in different formats, Parquet files, or maybe sometimes it is just CSV files, right? There is some sort of schema that comes from the source system. Based on that, you define the architects, the data architects, and what does this define the schema on the target? What if the schema or how the files come from the source are different from the target schema? When the data pipelines run and they see the source data, and they could not see the same structure as the target in the source file, it says, hey, I don't see a place where I can write this data to. So I'm going to fail. It just fails. This is what I call data engineering text. What we are doing in so much unstructured data, in such a dynamic world, in such a dynamic era, we are using deterministic logic. So we have hard-coded our schema, we are using a deterministic schema on the target, and we expect the same thing from the source. But now there are so many changes, so many dynamics happening at the source side, we cannot guarantee that it's going to be the same. And that's where the pipelines break, and the poor data ops guy gets a pager at 2 a.m. in the morning, the pipeline failed. Because the same pipeline is addressing 800 or maybe 1,000 or more than 1,000 tables at the same time. And then there are some critical reports that need to be presented to your higher leadership or maybe to CEO at 6 a.m. in the morning. So you need to fix the data pipeline so that it doesn't affect the report that needs to be delivered at 6 a.m. in the morning. What is data engineering text? On the left-hand side, the manual text column mapping. So what works today? We have a column named SKU, which is the product ID. We have price underscore AUD, which is the unit cost, and store underscore locator, store name. Based on this columns, based on this schema, we develop our target schema. One fine day, which probably happens to be a Friday night, someone changed the column names. So what happens, instead of using SKU, they change the name to item ID. It is still the product ID, but they change the name. Price AUD got changed to item cost. It is still the unit cost. And the store name, which is store locator, location, got changed to location underscore one. So there was no addition or deletion of the columns. It is just a very simple example. There might be other instances where one of the vendor that you have as a third party, they added a new column altogether. They didn't even change the name. What happens, because the source has different names now, and on the target, you can't find that target schema, the pipeline fails. The poor engineer, he wakes up and he tries to debug the pipeline. After spending 4 to 6 hours, they figure out the pipeline failed because this schema drifted from its original state in this particular source, and then they fix it. What's the modern fix? Now, we have been talking about this event-based or event-driven architecture. Now, with the evolution of generative AI, if we try and hook together the event-driven architecture with the power of Gemini, this is something that we created, self-curation engine, zero touch. So during the data injection, the source files or the data that's coming from the source gets scanned on the fly automatically. And then if there is a schema drift, it suggests that this is the schema drift and this is what we think the mapping should be. Serverless, event-driven, and zero idle costs. So if there is no data that's coming into your landing zone, in your landing bucket, there's no cost because there's nothing that's running. Maybe this is the, let me try this. This is the slide that you want to probably pay more attention to. If I close this. So on the very far left, we have cloud storage, which is our landing layer. That's where all the files from the source systems are coming in. Now, as soon as a file comes in, it triggers an event. So as soon as the file is committed to the storage bucket, Event Arc, which is an event-based service from Google Cloud, it gets invoked. What Event Arc does, that it triggers another serverless function, which is Cloud Run in our case. So Event Arc says that, yes, okay, there is a event that has happened in Google Cloud Storage. There's a new file that has landed. It triggers Cloud Run. Now, what Cloud Run? It inspects the headers and first row samples. So we are not reading the whole file. Why would you read the whole file? You don't really need the whole file. All you need to know is the schema, and that you can find out just by reading the first few rows. So as soon as the file lands, even though triggers the Cloud Run, it reads the first headers and few row samples. Then it triggers Gemini. If there is a drift, it asks Gemini to analyze the source file that has landed. And Gemini already has the information about the target schema, and it does the mapping. If it feels like, I think the structure is fine enough, we can do the mapping and we can copy the data over. So there is a confidence gate that we have put in place. So unless Gemini is more than 90% confident that the schema that it is proposing, it is correct, it will not write to the target storage. So when the file lands, it Cloud Run reads the file, it invokes Gemini. Gemini says, again, I'm more than 90% confident that the schema matches. There's no call that gets invoked, and the file automatically gets written into our BigQuery, the warehouse that we have in BigQuery. So in our previous example, where we had SKU ID that got changed to item number or item ID, right? Now, Gemini is smart enough because it has been grounded on the data that already exists, that anything that has the description of product ID, even if it is it says item number or SKU number, it is basically a product ID. So based on the information, based on the data that it has been trained on, it creates its own confidence, and it says, rather than fitting the pipeline, I'll write the data because it matches. Then the second case, what happens if there is a mismatch in 2 or 3 columns, or maybe more than that? Or what happens if there is a couple of extra columns or few less columns? It can't even match because there is no description. So what Gemini does, if it scores less than 90% as the confidence gate, it then triggers an alert. So in my case, for the demo purposes, I've configured Slack for the alerting. You can configure whatever you want, be an email alert, you can SendGrid, or any alerting app that you have, maybe Option. So it triggers the alert, and only if it is less than 80% confident, it triggers the alert and it pages the on-call UD. However, in this case, there's a change. And the change is, it clearly tells the engineer, hey, in this file, this particular row or this particular column has mismatched schema from the target column. Can you go and check? This is my suggestion. If you think what I suggested makes sense, you approve it. So the engineer approves it within the Slack channel itself, and then Cloud Run goes back and generates a SQL statement for them, and the data gets written. So the engineer doesn't even have to log into the console or look at the data pipeline. However, if engineer feels like, oh no, it doesn't really make sense, or I can't really understand this, now at least he has a way forward. He has been told where the pipeline failed, what were the issue, where the gap is. He just needs to go there, manually verify the data, and approve it or either change it himself. Now, there is a third scenario. What if the error, similar error, occurred maybe 6 months later? Do you expect Gemini to page the engineer again for the same issue? It's like back in days, I still remember when there was a disk failure in your SAN storage. The help desk team, they used to just create the ticket. Every time a disk failed, they'll create a ticket again and they'll assign it to L1 engineer or L2 engineer, and then they'll come back and they'll figure out, yes, if the disk has failed, where it failed. So it was a repetitive task. You would expect, now we are talking about the modern architecture, modern fix. You would expect it to handle those sort of scenarios automatically. So what is being done here in the third case, if the similar sort of error happens again in future, 6 months or 12 months down the line, Gemini creates a fingerprint of the same file, source file, where the schema drift happened, and it stores in memory. So in future, or whenever Gemini calls, Gemini gets called by Cloud Run, it always matches the fingerprints in Firestore or in the memory. If it finds the fingerprint there, it just looks at what was the solution that was provided, either by manually changing the schema by data engineer or approving the suggestion from Gemini. And it repeats the same solution again, unless you feel like, it's been 2 years, that solution doesn't hold any good, so I'm just going to clear my cache or my memory for anything that's older than 2 years. So, talking about ingestion, this is the ingestion in the cloud storage. The file length, CSV or JSON, it triggers the event arc. Event arc, as soon as it says that the object has been finalized, it triggers an event. Cloud Run, the orchestrator. So Cloud Run looks at the first few bytes of the file. It checks the Firestore, has the similar error, similar issue occurred before. If the fingerprint exists in Firestore, it skips the Gemini call. It just gets a cache hit. So it finds the data in cache, that's a cache hit, it skips the Gemini call. If it has a cache miss, which is it doesn't find the fingerprint of similar situation in memory, it calls Vertex AI Gemini. For the demo purposes, I'm using Gemini Flash Lite, which is the very light model, just from a speed and usage perspective. But again, you might want to look at changing the model that you would use if you happen to use something similar in your production farm. And the confidence gate. One thing I didn't mention about the confidence gate, it's programmable, it's configurable. You can change the confidence gate. If down the line you feel like I've got enough data for my model to be grounded on, and it's working very well for me, I might now lower the confidence down to 80 from 90, because I feel like it is sending me a lot of alerts at 90% threshold, and most of the time they are pretty much correct. So I'll lower it down to 80 if you feel more confident. After that, what happens? There is a safe cast. What I mean by that, to make sure that Gemini doesn't generate anything rubbish, I'm explicitly forcing Gemini to generate an executable JSON schema in SQL format. So I'm asking Gemini not to return any text to me, I'm asking it to return a JSON of the suggested schema and then generate a SQL command for the update in the target, which is the SQL hydration. So output and the state, once approval is done, the data gets written into BigQuery, memory or the fingerprints get stored in Firestore as a memory. In my case, I'm using Slack. As I said, you can use whatever you want. Human in the loop. That's where if the mapping that's suggested by Gemini and the confidence is lower than the threshold, 90% in my case, it will send a Slack notification. Time for demo. So what are we going to do in through our categorized in 3 demos? Part number 1, the automated weighing. So file lands, engine wakes up, data gets curated, and 0 human intervention, because that's the very first time I'm uploading a file. So it is just uploading the file, and it's not calling Gemini or anything. So I know what my target schema is. Part 2 is I've created a file, a demo file with rubbish data in it that has broken schema. So it should have very low confidence level, definitely below than 90%. And then it will send a Slack notification to me. Now it's up to me to review it. If I feel like it's good enough, I'm confident, I can just approve it. Otherwise, I have the option of manually changing it and then writing it in my target state. The third part of the demo is re-upload the same file, the file that we used in demo 2. So what should happen? Now it has already created a fingerprint in my Firestore memory. So it should see that, okay, I've already had similar type of schema drift previously. So I'm not going to call Gemini. I'm just going to read what happened last time and I'll perform the same action. As I was saying, this is something that I've forced Gemini to do to make sure it doesn't generate any rubbish data. So whenever Gemini is responding back to me with an output, I'm asking it to generate a JSON template and then generate the SQL queries so that it can use the suggestion from JSON template and update it in the target scheme. So some of the key takeaways from data transcriptionists to data orchestrators. So stop building pipelines that match strings. How we were developing the pipelines, it was matching the strings, it was looking at the source and the target, and then it was matching it. Trust by design, human in the loop is not a failure mode, it's a governance feature. So it's the human in the loop that we are using, it's basically used to make sure that the schema that is, or the suggestions that have been provided by Gemini are correct enough. With time, the more your model is bounded with more data, the more intelligent it becomes. And memory equals scale. So AI is the full start, Firestore is the cache that compounds. So based on the number of instances of the similar errors, it's not going to repeat the pipeline failure or notification alerts time and again. It will keep on looking at the memory that's being compounded in your memory scope. So the goal is not to replace the data engineers. There have been a lot of talks about AI replacing developers, AI replacing engineers, platform engineers. So the goal is not to replace the data engineers. It is to replace the data entry. Data engineers should do what they are meant to do, engineering. Look at developing the pipelines rather than looking at the problem and then doing the data entry, following the schema. So before we start the workshop, here is the QR code for the GitHub repo. As I said, I've tried my best to make it workshop ready, but if we encounter any issues, we'll figure out on the go. So here's the GitHub repo for the demo code. And here's the QR code if you want to connect on LinkedIn. Once everyone has the access to the GitHub repo, let me know, and we'll move on to the workshop. Scan the QR code. Is that font big enough? Okay, so before we do the demo, let me quickly walk you through the steps that we'll perform. Right, so you should see something like this. So workshop.mp is the first file that you have to look at. After scanning the QR code for the GCP credits, you should have got access to our Google Cloud project. And so you should have the GCP project with bidding enabled already after scanning the code. To make it more simple, so that you don't have to do all the configurations on your local machine, I suggest you use gcloud CLI. So once you log into your project, there should be a shell button at the very top right-hand side corner. If you can't find it, let me know, then we'll look at it. And the third step is the Slack workspace or app creation. In the interest of time, because we probably might not have that much time, what I would suggest is I'll give you the credentials for my Slack workspace. You can use that just for demo purpose. However, when you build it in your own time later on, there is a step-by-step process of creating a Slack workspace. So you can create your own Slack workspace, and you can generate your credentials that you'll have to key into the Cloud Run service that will tell the Cloud Run service that in case it triggers the Gemini call, how does it notify the DevOps engineer? In that configuration, you are more than welcome to change whatever tool that you want to configure in it, be it SendGrid or OpsJD, or take it for a ride if you want. So we'll probably skip the Slack workspace creation phase. Once you come to that, let me know. I'll give you my workspace credentials. What you'll have to do is run this file here, workshop_deploy.sh. So this is going to do a few things. What this script does, it will enable all the required GCP APIs. There are a bunch of APIs that will have to enable. Say, how many of you are familiar with Google Cloud Platform, GCP? Okay. So before you can create any resource in a Google Cloud platform, you create a project. Once you create an account, by default, you are assigned a project. So you might not need to create a project in our case. You can use the default project that was created. You just need to make sure that it is attached to the billing account that you use to redeem the credits. Otherwise, there'll be two cases. Either it will fail because it won't have any billing account attached to it, or you'll get a big bill later on because your credit card will be attached to it. So it will enable all the GCP APIs. It will create a GCP, GCS, not GCP. GCS is Google Cloud Storage for the landing, where it will land the files, where it will store the files. It will create BigQuery dataset and curated table. Then it initializes the file store. File store is what we are going to use for memory. Then the Slack credentials in Secret Manager. So as I was saying, if you don't have the credentials, that's fine. I'll give you mine. That's again a trial. It will grant all the IAM roles for the Cloud Run Service account. So because we are using service accounts, there are a lot of service interactions that's happening, and it will use a service account to trigger those services. And unless we assign the appropriate permissions, it's not going to work. Then it will create an event arc trigger. In the 9th step, we'll seed BigQuery with historical data. So we'll seed it with some sample data so that it has a schema created. Now, before prerequisites, I think you have already done the GCP billing. We'll skip the second part, G-Cloud CLI authentication. For that, we'll use the Google Cloud Shell so that you don't have to do this. And for the Slack webhook, we'll skip that part as well for our lab. All right. So here is my session. Let me reset everything before I run so that any data that's already there in my target schema, I wipe it out so that I can start from scratch. Clean. Let me bring up, while it's happening, let me bring up the demo worksheet. So we have done a reset. So it pretty much cleans up all the existing data. Then I'll skip all this part. This is just a verification. The Act 1, which is the automated way, right? So we'll copy this file. So let me quickly go and check what this file contains. So if I go here, this is the CJSON. So it is, this is what we have fed it into our target schema. This is how we have created the target schema. This is the file 1, right? So now I know what my schema looks like. It has transaction ID, store name, amount, currency code. So based on that target schema, I've created a file which matches exactly like my target schema. So the expectation is it shouldn't trigger the Gemini call. Why? Because there's no mismatch, right? Whereas this is the ambiguous schema, ambiguous file. So if you see, there are a whole bunch of dummy rubbish columns that are put in there that doesn't match the target schema. So it says column A, column B, column C. invoice number, date, time, etc. No, okay, that's this is sorry. Using anti-gravity as my ID, so it already has all the capability of Gemini content, so it is already all that stuff. All right, so the cleanup is done. Let me upload the file. So what I'm doing here, G-Cloud Storage CP data legacy post export v1.csv into that bucket. Demo 1 is what we are doing. So this is going to copy the legacy post export v1 CSV file, the one that we showed with exact schema as the target. And it is going to copy that as act1 underscore demo.csv. Is it visible to everyone at the back, or is it too low, too small? So the file has been copied. Let me go to the other terminal and run the logs. So this is a logging rate. So I'm reading the logs to see what has happened. Now, if you see, event arc was triggered, cache miss. So obviously there was nothing in the fingerprints. So it called Gemini, but then look at the confidence level of Gemini, 98%, because it saw pretty much exactly the same schema as my target. So status auto approve, because it is more than 90% confident, it auto approves. What happened? 5 rows got updated in my retail underscore curated table in the staging area. And it also created a fingerprint. So if you look at the fingerprint hash value, say it created a fingerprint that got stored in Firestore. Now, let me go back here. Clear command. So instead of Act 1 demo, this time let's do Act 2 demo. So I'm copying the ambiguous schema CSV file, which has all the garbage data, as act2.csv, act2 underscore demo.csv. It is copying the file has been copied. If I go here, I run the logs again. It says logs didn't come yet, event are triggered. Let's run it again. So it says cache miss, and then it called Gemini. Confidence level is 88%. So I should have received a Slack notification here. Let me bring it up. That's status here. So okay. That's probably a bug that's there. I need to fix that. Yeah, it should say human in the loop or something. So if you look here, 1952, I think, yeah, that's all right. Where is it? So it says the column A should go to transaction ID. Confidence is 95%. Column B should go to event timestamp. And column C should go to total amount. Column D should go to store name. How is it making that sort of prediction? How is it making that suggestion? Any guess?
Based on the 5 rows of data.
Based on the description. Based on the description, because it reads only the first few rows. It says, what's the string type in this particular column? And what's the string name in target schema for this type of data? If there happen to be more than, say, 4 or 5 columns, with timestamp. So one might be when was the order received, when was the order delivered, when was the order updated. So if there are multiple columns with a timestamp, then it would have been difficult for Gemini to figure out which one is actually the transaction ID or which one is the order update ID. In that case, it might have made a mistake. And that's where you will really need to come in as a reviewer, review what Gemini is suggesting, and then approve it. But had there been similar instances 6 or 7 times, or I don't know, maybe 20 times, then it would learn, okay, the earliest time is when the order is placed. The time after that, somewhere in the middle, is when the order was updated. And the latest one is when the order was dispatched. Yes.
So like does it never look at the row?
Never look at what?
Like Gemini never looks at the row to see what kind of time.
That's completely configurable. That's up to you how much data access you want to give it.
But you're saying it doesn't need.
Yeah, it doesn't need to in my case because I'm only using 4 or 5 rules. So that's why I said it only reads the header and few rules. Because in my case, I'm only updating 5 rules. So I don't really want it to read the whole table, right? So for grounding, it completely depends on you how much training data you want it to read. So that's completely configured.
What happens is PII data. Like a lot of PII data, the source on what you last.
Exactly. So you won't use in those scenarios, right? So you'll have to figure out how are you going to make it intelligent enough so that just by looking at the column name, if it is able to figure that out. I won't probably give it access to the PII data. Just here.
Sorry, I have one more question. What happens if it's a nested JSON, like if multi-nested JSON, and then you have a similar structure in 2 different places, but not the same?
Yeah. So again, that it is always going to generate some sort of response. It is always going to give you some suggestions. Now, as a human in the loop, you have to make sure that you give it enough data from training point of view. If it sees that nested structure 4 or 5 or 10 times, then obviously it's going to see the pattern, and it's going to create those hashes or fingerprints in the cache. This is a very, very basic example. That's why I'm not really reading the whole part. So only a few rows and the header. Now I have the option either to go and edit it manually, but in my case, it's quite simple. So total amount is what? It's a numeric value. Store name is what? It's a string. Timestamp is what? It's a date. So I know that it has, and then I checked in my target schema and the file that was loaded. Okay, yes, it sounds right. And then every time it sees something similar, a similar scenario, okay, so any numeric data, I'm going to put that as total amount. Anything that comes as a timestamp, as a date, I'm going to put that as a event timestamp. Anything that comes as a string, last time it was transaction store name, I'm going to put it as a store name. So I approved it. Approve and save. So it's going to take some time. I've approved it. Based on its suggestion, it's now going to create a JSON schema, and then it's going to create the SQL command. From an auditing point of view, you see here, it has also captured that who approved it. So Anupam.p, it has put in my name there for auditing. This engineer approved this file on this date and time. So that gives you a capability to track the changes, who made the changes, who approved those changes, and what were those changes. Let's go back. So let's try the third scenario wherein we're going to copy the same file with a different name. So I'm going to copy the same file, legacy files, export v1, or we can even do the ambiguous data one with a different name, act3.demo. So what it is going to do is in the first instance, it had a cache mint. There was nothing in the cache. So it generated a hash, it generated a fingerprint, and it stored in the memory, although the confidence level was high. So it will see that, okay, last time the pipeline got auto-approved because I had 98% for this type of data. So it is going to do the same thing. Let's check in the logs. And it should not trigger any Slack notification, any Gemini call. So if I check for Act3, Act3 demo, fingerprint, skipping Gemini call, because it already noticed that there is a cache hit. There's already a fingerprint for similar file. So it skipped the Gemini call altogether. What's the difference here? Does anyone remember what happened in the Act 1? It went to Gemini first because there was no fingerprint. It went to Gemini first. It was a cache miss. It called Gemini. Gemini was more than 98% confident. So it auto-approved and wrote the data to my BigQuery. In this case, it doesn't even call the Gemini because the fingerprint already exists in the memory. Cool. So, time to get our hands dirty. Are you guys ready to try it out yourself? Has everyone been able to clone the repo? Are we excited enough to do it?
I did like almost everything, but I'm aware like I don't want to run a script because I don't want these to create like a bunch of different services and I'm not today because it's enabled in the alien account.
Yeah. So have you changed the credits?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So you
But it still asks me to put my credit card.
that's what I'm. Do you have a Google Cloud account already?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. So you should be able to. It won't ask you for the credit card. It is one. If you already have a Google Cloud account,
Yeah.
So you just run it for, you have to rename it to the function store. But I think your review about it.
it may be clear because as I was saying, I was doing it on the fly. Let's see.
So like the first one. Sorry, to copy that order.
I see. Don't read the read. Just do the workshop.md. That's why I created workshop.md, and this is the one. I'll maybe delete this. So this is from my thing. So let's delete. Has anyone been able to run the deploy.sh file yet?
Yeah.
It worked fine?
It's still doing.
Okay.
Like,
So-
using Phogat.
Yeah, so Cloud Run is the one that takes longest. I was thinking of creating the image, pushing it to Artifact for H3, but then I thought you won't probably get the full picture. At the step where it asks you for Slack credentials, just let me know. I'll give you mine. Otherwise, you'll have to configure your own Slack workspace.
I skipped it.
You skipped it? Oh, no.
Not that important.
Okay, no. Then it's going to
Okay.
throw an error. You know why? If you skip it, if you hit enter, what it is going to do is it is going to read the variables from, where did I keep it? So it's going to read the variables from the file somewhere here. And it just says replace it with your own Slack. Yeah, if you just hit enter, it is going to look for the variables from the variables form. That's fine. Let's see.
Why?
Has anyone else been able to deploy the service? Have you tried running the deploy.sh? So you don't really have to do anything else. You already got the GCP project with the billing account enabled. And then, as I mentioned, that use your Google Cloud Shell instead of your own local machine, your terminal. So, for a year, it's only going to fail this here at the on the sense set. So I'm using the credits back from sequence. But when you have credits, you won't have a sequence to go.
But it is setting up with the bigger credits. So when I get
yes, you can change that, and then you can use it for the cost. Yes, but first you have to create a workspace. It's organized. You just make a creation. Okay, now did you scan it? Yes. Yeah.
I mean, Slack ready.
No, you don't need Slack credits because it gives you the free trial. Oh, my God. No, that's why I'm saying I'll give you credits that you don't need to do anything in Slack. So what I'll give you is the credentials that you can book into your cloud service. Then, so what will happen is whenever you upload any file, it will come to my workspace. It will come to my. No. No. I'll have to pay a lot for that. How is everyone going? Did anyone try to deploy the services and Gemini? No? Okay, for demo purpose, if anyone wants to really try and do the demo X, I'll give you the secrets for my Slack. The only caveat would be that whenever you upload an ambiguous file, it will send an alert on my Slack channel, my Slack workspace, right? But I've given you the process. If you want to try out by creating your own workspace, it should hardly take 5 to 10 minutes, and it gives you free access, I think for about a week or 2 weeks. You will not be able to add any other team members, but you will still be able to continue using Slack, even when the trial license expires. So if you want to play around with it, more than happy to try and build your own workspace. Is anyone really interested in trying it out here? If not, then I'll not share the credentials. But if you want to try it out, but if you want to build your own, feel free. Okay. Any questions or any doubts? Does anyone understand what we did today? What we tried? And yes.
How does the model know that these are the schemas it has to compare against? Like in this example, we had only one. In production, we could have, like the other guy said, nested. There could be hundreds of schemas. Could you please explain that part? How the model or the code would have checked that the moment it received an event of file, how did it go and access all the schema and compare it against it?
So schema for a particular data set will always be one. It will all depend on how you develop your pipelines. In my case, it is only one data set. So the way I develop it, it is the logic that you will define in Cloud Run. So if I go here, where it's here, right? So in my Cloud Run service, because there is only one data set that I currently have, and it has only one schema. So when you develop your pipeline, that's where in the Cloud Run service, that's where you'll be defining that you go and look at this data set or look at, so you'll not be defining the schema, you'll be defining the data set when you run the pipeline, when you write the Cloud Run code. Yeah, you'll have to change it with your project ID. So you know how to find the project ID? Okay. When you go to Google Cloud Console, it should take you to this home page, right? And this is your project ID. So you should have a default project. So there is a project number, and against that, there should be a project ID. Or you can even run the CLI command. Or if you are using the Cloud Shell, it won't even ask you for the project ID because the Cloud Shell is activated within the same project. So it will automatically take the same project ID. So if I authorize, does anyone know what happens when you initiate a Cloud Run G-Cloud Shell instance? It spins up a container, right, in your project. So it already takes all those, not really in your project, but with your project parameters. So it automatically comes up. So you see, it has already taken the project name there, and it would have already exported the project. So if I do a G-Cloud config list, so you see G-Cloud config list, it is already taking my account as the account ID, and then the project is by default self-curation engine, which is the project that I spin up this G-Cloud shell. Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Have you played with credits? Okay. And do you have the billing account attached to this project? Where is your project? And is it attached? Okay, now can you go back to the project place? Here on the console itself. So where does it say billing account? Sorry, what's that?
Unless you're there to be right. Let's see if you can you still have the
How's everyone going? So just in the interest of time, looks like everyone wants to set up their own environment. How are you going with the workspace? Okay, you good? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll wrap it up here. I've given you the all the code. Try it out. Set up your own workspace. Connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, ping me anytime. Before we wrap up, I just want to make sure that everyone has the $5 credit, because it looks like there are a few people who either got it messed up or they haven't been able to claim it. So you just need to make sure that when you are deploying the script in a project, you're deploying it in the same project that the billing account where you claim your $5 credited is attached to it. You might have multiple billing accounts. You might have multiple billing accounts, but if the billing account is not attached to the project, it will fail. Sorry? Yeah. So you go to billing, go to billing. So you don't even have it. You haven't claimed the credit. Yes, so okay. So scan the QR code. So that means we haven't claimed the credits yet. That's why it was probably asking you for the credit card. All right. Is there any questions from anyone?
Oh, yeah. Because we're adding Gemini into the layer, so it's another extra layer in the making a pipeline. Would there be any latency because Gemini is working before we are ingesting the data into the storage?
No, the data will anyways be ingested in the storage because those are the files that are coming from your source. So whether we use Gemini to analyze that or not, it is anyways going to be ingested in the storage.
From ingest data, and because Gemini is in the middle of the layer,
Yeah.
before it is finally processed to the final layer. As opposed to from the very beginning to the very final layer, would there be any delay or latency?
No, so that's the whole purpose of developing this, right? So in your pipeline, because that pipeline is taking care of the ingestion for, I don't know, as I was saying, multiple data sets and maybe hundreds and thousands of the tables. So rather than filling the whole pipeline and impacting all your tables, what you are doing here is you're letting your pipeline run for all the tables, but for that particular table, it is just invoking Gemini, and then it is creating the operations member. If it feels like Gemini is 100% confident, then it updates that table as well. But even if for some reason the confidence level is not as per your threshold, it is only halting the update of that table. So it is only impacting that table or that data set instead of impacting or failing your whole pipeline. And that's the whole purpose, that because of one bad file or one bad data, I don't want all the 1,000 tables to be impacted. That impacts my whole in the morning. And if it happens to be, again, it goes way beyond. Again, how you want to apply that logic. If you want to categorize the source files, this particular file is only for like weekly reporting or monthly reporting, and it's not critical enough to wake up a data ops engineer in the middle of the night. So it can wait till morning. How you categorize your alerts, P1, P2, P3, right? So you can apply the same sort of tiering here as well. So if it is not critical enough, you let all the other pipelines go as is. You just hold that particular update for that particular table. And when the data engineer or data ops guys, they're receiving their shift in the morning, they just look at the alert and they see, okay, yeah, there is an error, they just approve it.
My name's Ben. ICT Super Officer. So I've got a cybersecurity question for you, but going through your review is good. I saw the input injection protection and so forth. It's good to see. I guess my question is and I'll give you a continuation of your example you gave of the 6 in the morning report that needs to be done. So that same data engineer gets a call from me, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and I'm there going like, I've got a legal department here and a really federal police officer, and they say like, okay, we've got some data in our database here. That there was retail sale to several kilograms of ammonium nitrate, so is shell. We need data provenance from that point all the way back to that original file that got dropped in, and making sure that was the original file. And I guess, how do we do that? Data engineer.
That's a pretty good question. Look, whenever you talk about AI, there are always talks about data privacy, security, cyber things. So rather than me answering your question directly, there was a talk that I gave at Sydney a couple of months back, and the whole talk the title was From Burnout to Boardroom. What it was that for small to medium businesses, the owners are pretty much wearing multiple hats. They are doing digital marketing, they are doing sales, they are doing data engineering, they are doing operations, they are also doing finances. The whole idea was to generate your AI C-suite. CHRO, the human resource officer, CSO, your strategy officer, CM, marketing officer. What was the other one? CFO, your finance officer. Then a guy from the audience, he came up and saying, hey, what about the legal implications and the compliance? And then, yes, all these are true, right? And that's why we always talk about training the model like your own baby, training your baby. So you do not give the power that the model or your baby is not capable enough of handling yet without actually training them properly. So same thing applies here. Based on my scenario, I try to create those guardrails, like human in the loop from a governance point of view. From an auditing point of view, that's why I'm using Slack. So it keeps track of who approved what file, when, and what are the changes that it did. So it completely depends on, one, your requirement. If it is a marketing agency, I don't really think that they need those sort of things, right? So, and that's why a lot of startups or a lot of small to medium business, or the small companies, they are able to try a lot of things at a rapid pace because they do not have, and I'm not saying that's wrong or right, it's all about requirements. What is the requirement within your organization? And it's up to you how you design those guardrails, how you architect it. Some organizations, they don't even allow even the metadata to go anywhere outside Australia, even just the metadata. And there are companies who even have their whole database sitting in Australia, US Central One or other regions. So unfortunately, I don't have a direct answer to your question because it is quite subjective. It is quite subjective to the environment that you are working on, your compliance requirements, your governance. There are companies who have compliance requirements of storing 20 years worth of data. There are companies who delete the whole data after 3 months. What are you going to do keeping all the audit logs after 3 months? It is just consuming a lot of storage and I'm paying for nothing for the data that I don't even look at. Not sure if I answered your question.
Definitely is a part of it. You talked about Slack being a centralized location for your system blocks to a certain degree. And I do realise you had some fingerprints, talked about some tokenization at certain points there, and even some timestamps. But yeah, it's just that gluing that all together. When I talk to the data engineers, I was like, I need a forensic. But yeah, it is different from company to company. A bank is going to be different to a retail company. It's going to be different to a legal services company. So yeah.
There is a fantastic book that's written, a whole SRE framework was developed by Google. If you have not read yet, I would highly recommend for anyone. I mean, it doesn't matter if you are from ops or engineering, whatever background, but you should, if you're in IT, you should really read the SRE book by Google. And there are mentions about creating SLIs, which is service level indicators, setting SLOs and SLAs, and then there is a great book, Measure What Matters. So why I'm saying this, you have to be very clear in terms of what matters to your business, what you want to measure. You definitely want to measure what really matters, but you don't want to over measure to overcomplicate the things, right? So only measure what matters, but measure what really matters. I'm not sure again if that helped, but if you go to Google Cloud Console as well, from a monitoring point of view, there are a hell lot of matrices that are available that you can measure. But if you're capturing each and every matrix, is it really adding value to your business or what you really trying to do? Say, if threshold is something that I'm not really caring about, I only care about the request per minute. So why would I keep on tracking the thresholds? So for this particular thing, what mattered to me is who approved it, when it was approved, and what was the file that got approved, and what are the changes that it made in my layer. That's all I care about, and that has already been captured in Slack. If I want to centralize everything, I can probably hook all those messages into something like, I don't know, maybe a centralized monitoring tool or something.
So it sounds like you're saying that, well, the first part, sounds like you're saying that we make sure we build that center of excellence of getting the right, like you're talking about CFO, CEO, and I guess maybe legal, maybe cyber, maybe people in part of software development's life cycle of the whole product. So you can cover those bases, but also second part to your thing is that sounds like the takeaway is also to figure out what is the value in that for your business. Might not be, like, might not have to include everything, or something maybe adjacent, but might not be something that you have to directly involve all the time in your development process.
Yeah, 100% right. Look, and I'll go back to the tagline that I finished my presentation with. The idea is not to replace the data engineers here. The idea is to replace the data entry that they do. Get the agents do that. Get the agents do what is repetitive, what is mundane, what is level 0 kind of task. And let the engineers focus on reviewing, giving instructions to the agents, and designing good agents and architecture.
Take one last question.
I want to ask about, because recently I'm actually trying to deploy my projects on Google Cloud. So there are some problems like the database, because I'm not actually built the cloud like the Google, like the Google, the database inside, and I want to try to migrate my personal my personal database into the Google one. So I want to ask that is there will be some capability problems, or is there any other suggestions for the path to migrate all the databases? Right?
That's a I don't know. Look, I'm taking time to figure out how to answer that. I think in its original form, the way you have asked the question, I don't really understand what the ask is or what you are trying to achieve. Migrating a database to Google Cloud, yes, absolutely. But what kind of database? What is the use case? What are you doing with that database? That defines the whole process of how you want to migrate and on what service. There are tens of databases that are available on Google Cloud itself. But all that depends on your use case. What are you trying to do? That will define the process of how you migrate and where you migrate it. Like Firestore that I use, right? So it's also a database, but then you have BigQuery as well. That is also a database. Then you have SQL as well. That is also a database. So, but what exactly is your use case now?
The database I use is SQLite. Yes, because I store some, I actually store some APIs and some information like some social media. So for example, I store some data and analytic data like the count of likes and maybe it will store like the JSON form.
Yeah, again, I think you'll have to go a bit deeper into it, understand what you are using the database for. Yes, there are multiple ways. You can definitely do a lift and shift as well. But is it really worth just doing lift and shift? Are you paying more money for just storing your SQL instance onto it, right? So it all depends on how, what the use case is. What are you trying to achieve? What are the your front-end services that you are addressing using the database? Is there a better alternate?
Okay, thank you.
It's as simple as like migrating your WordPress website. So you can either just create a VM, host a WordPress server on it, or just use a managed WordPress service on it, or just get rid of WordPress altogether and create the website completely on Google Cloud. So it all depends on what's your use.
Maybe later I will ask more about this after this finish. Okay.
Cool. I think we are at time. If there are no further questions, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining me for the talk. Really appreciate you spending the time and giving your Friday evening with us. Thank you.